Yeah, just to test, huh? Can you hear me clearly and also see the screen share? Please reply. Okay. Thanks, everyone. If in case the screen is not moving or what, please inform me either through the mic or through the meeting chat. I think through the mic is better. I will commence the tutorial 1 at 2:30 sharp. Okay, welcome to tutorial 1. Before I commence the tutorial proper, I need you all to understand the importance of Bloom taxonomy. Okay, so Bloom taxonomy is a guide on how to set questions. Okay, so if we want to test you on the cognitive area or cognitive domain, it means we are going to test you on your so-called thinking skill. Cognitive means thinking skill, using your brain. So under Bloom taxonomy, the thinking skill are divided into 6 levels. Level 1 to 6. Level 1 is remembering. Level 2 is understanding. He's getting higher and higher skill. Level 3 is applying. Level 4 is analyzing. Level 5 is evaluating. And level 6, the highest one, is creating. Very advanced thinking skill. That is cognitive. The next item is on the feelings. Affective domain is more towards your heart, okay, your feelings, your passion, and so on. So under this Bloom taxonomy, if you're going to test you on your using your heart approach, okay, rather than your mind approach or your brain approach, this is the area that we're going to test you. For example, A1 is the receiving phenomena type. A2 is the response to the phenomena. A3 is the valuing. You can see the level is getting higher and higher. Then you have your A4 is organization of things, how you feel. And then you have your A5, internalize. That means that you are very experienced and having a higher level of so-called using your feelings to express. Okay, so this is what the affective domain is all about. Okay, so we have the first one, cognitive, using your brain. The second one, affective, making use of your feelings, your heart. I call it, I classify as heart. Then the third category is the psychomotor. Okay, so psychomotor is more related to your hand, legs, muscle, your eyes, and so on. So this testing your so-called your skill. You can use your hand, your legs, your muscles, your body. That is called psychomotor. So on the psychomotor, we have 5 levels also. First, the lowest level is imitation. You just imitate and copy. Okay? That is the lowest level. Then the second level, you should be able to manipulate. And then the third level, you are getting more experience already. Then you should be having something more precise, precision. And then number 4 is articulation. That means that you can develop something new. Okay. Then number 5, P5 is naturalization. It's expert level already. Okay. So these are the levels that you come across. For cognitive, there are 6 levels. Affective, there are 5 levels. Psychomotor, there are 5 levels. So how to identify whether it's level 1, 2, 3, and so on, then you have to go back to your key verbs here. You can see here the key verbs used in the questions. Okay. So if that questions are usually contain verbs like define, describe, identify, knows, label, match, outline, recall, reproduce. So these are memorizing categories. So they're testing on your C1. On your C2, so these are the keywords will be there on any of the questions. To comprehend, to defend, to estimate, to explain, to provide examples, to interpret, to summarize and translate, rewrite, and so on. So this will be under the C2 category. And then you have your C3, application, apply. So there will be a verbs in the sentence, there will be apply or sometimes change, compute, construct, demonstrate, manipulate, predicts, prepare, produce, shows, solve, and uses. So these are the C3 category. Then your C4, 5 and 6. C4 is analyzing. There will be verbs used in the sentence or questions. Have a verbs of analyze or ask a breakdown, or sometimes there's a compare, contrast, diagram, produce diagram, differentiates, distinguish, identify, illustrate, outline, relates, and separate. These are under the C4 level that you are asked. Similarly, C5, evaluating, you asked to appraise, you asked to compare, see? You asked to conclude, contrast, criticize, critique, defend, describe, discriminates, explain, evaluates, interpret, justify, summarize, supports. So this is your C5 category. To use that depth of your answers. Then the C6 is the highest one. Categorize, combine, compile, create, devise, explain, generate, modify, reconstruct, relate, reorganize, revise, and so on. Okay, summarize, and so on. So this is C6 level, which is the highest level that you are asked under the cognitive domain, under the Bloom taxonomy. So similarly for the rest, you have to go through the verbs here. A1 is acknowledge, ask, and so on. A2 is on answer, assist, aid. A3 will be appreciate, cherish, treasure, justify, propose, and so on. So all these are the keywords to guide you on the affective domain. Same case for your A4, compare, relates, and synthesize. Then you have your A5 is act, discriminate, display, modify, influence, perform, questions, revises, serve, solve, and verify. So this is under the A4 requirement. Similarly, for your psychomotor, P1, P2, P3. P1, copy, follow, mimic, repeat, reproduce, trace. These are all level 1 on your psychomotor. Then level 2, manipulation, you have to act, you have to build, you have to execute, you have to perform. Then you have the precision, calibrate, demonstrate, master, and then perfectionist. So you have your P3, P4, and P5. So P4 articulate, the word will be adapt, construct, combine, create, customize, modify, and formulate. And lastly, the expert level, naturalization, create, design, develop, invent, manage, and do something naturally. Okay, so these are the keywords that assist you to what domain, what level is required in the questions. Okay, so with that as an introduction, we can start off with our tutorial number 1 session. Okay, so before you start answering anything, please, you have to carry out this. Is on your analysis of every question. Okay, so the first thing of the analysis is to look into the Bloom taxonomy. So in this case here is describe. Okay, so describe, if you look at Bloom taxonomy, it will be C1 category. Okay, And then you ask to summarize. Okay, so summarize, if you look up, you will find that the summarize is quite a high level. Then you will discover that this summarize could be C2, could be C5, or could be C6. So if not, then you can check on summarize. Okay, see summarize. You see the word summarize, there's a possibility you can see it's used in C2. Okay, summarize here, C2. Okay, then C3, C4, you don't have summarize, you have your C5. C5 summarize, see here, C5. And then summarize here, C6. So C2, 5, 6. So now, you may ask the question, how to identify whether it's a C2, 5 or C6 level? I'm asked to answer. And the next thing is, you look at the whole questions. Okay, so you are asked a question, summarize pros and cons only. So it's something very basic. Okay, so it's something very basic. More often than not is C2 and not C5 and C6. So I hope you are clear. So next one is show. So this is show. So show, you look at the Bloom taxonomy, is talking about C3. Okay, so similarly, now there you have another one here. Show the difficulties and then provide examples. Okay, provide examples. So provide example is what level? Okay, examples. Provide examples. So you need to look at it. Provide example. Example. Any of them give you example. Here don't have example. C2. Any example? Yes. You see here example here. C2. C2 there's example. Okay. Then any C3 don't have example here. C4 we don't have example. Then look at C5. C5 any example? Interpret. I have C2 already. Then you don't have it here. C5 don't have. Now about C6. C6 any example? So you have your example there is a C2. So this one is your C2. C2 I put it as a green color. Okay. So example is asked you to your C2 level. Okay. And then this one show is C3. You look at the Bloom taxonomy is C3. How to show is how to know is C3? It is from here. See here? See here the word show here? C3. Okay, the word show. It doesn't appear in other place. So you know that show is belongs to C3 level. I hope you are clear on all this. So you try to do for the rest. Okay, identify is yellow color. It's a C1. Explain. This one is can be 256. So it is a green. And then here, any other things? Explain whether employer could be responsible or not. So this is a see. The question is the debt is 3, 2, 5, and 6. So with this sentence here, more often than not, the level could be higher than C2. Okay, yeah. So this one is a C2, 5, and 6. Okay, so you look at the questions. It's going to be definitely higher than C2 because you are asked to provide legal argument and so on. So most probably is a C5 and C6 category to provide for your answers. And then all these are level 3. Show level 3 is blue color. Okay, so here also show now it's a blue color. So it's all level 3 standard of your depth of your answers. Similarly here, also show whether it's a level 3 requirement. That means higher level than your so-called basic understanding. So same case here also, you need to show. Here also need to show. Some more, this one explain. Okay, so explain is 2, 5, and 6. So you can see which one is the more appropriate one. Okay, same case here, explain is 2, 5, and 6. All this will be under the 2, 5, and 6 category. So in fact, most of them will be look at the questions put forward to you. Okay, so we have already gone through the analysis on the Bloom taxonomy or your depth requirement. Whether it's a very simple one or whether it's more complicated, then your answer need to provide accordingly. Okay, so this will tell you what type of answers they need to provide to, what depth you need to provide. Okay, then the next one is after this so-called Bloom taxonomy analysis, the very important one is the issue. Okay, so question 1.1, what is the issue? Is reason for using standard form. That is the issue. Okay, so the second one is the pros and cons of using standard form. Okay, and then the third one, the issue is difficulties when you use standard form. And here number 4, solution to the difficulties when you use standard form. So these are the issues. Okay, and this one is your pros and cons. These are the issues that you need to look into. So for your second part, that is under the contractor design work, what are the issues? So the issue is any provision under the standard form. Any provision, okay, or any under the standard form contract, there is any provision allowing the contractor to carry out the design. So you have to look into the issue of whether the PEM form got such provision or not. So you have to study the PEM form. 1, 2, what is the issues? So now is whether the contractor can be held responsible for design error under the traditional approach. This is the issue. Okay, where there is no provision exists for the contractor to carry out the design. So this is the issue. Okay, so this issue, as I said, is not C2. It's going to be C5 and C6. C6 is a very high level. So more often than not, it's your C5 level that is asked. Okay. Next is on your subcontracting. Okay, what is the issues? Okay, so now the whether is main contractor can be responsible for NSA's design when it is defective. That is the issue. The next one is Q2. Architect approved drawings submitted. Okay, so now the question is, the issue is, if architect already accept, then how long before the contractor or the subcontractor is entitled for extension of time? That is the issue related to extension of time in approving drawings. Next one is on monitoring and quality. That is related to programs and related to meeting. So the program is used for monitoring your works and your quality. So under this question 1, you're dealing with working program submitted. Okay, and the working program contain critical and non-critical activities. Okay, now we are looking into this one. Can the architect use the float? Okay, so the question is, architect is going to use the float in the working program. So now the issue is this: whether the contractor is weak or strong in relation to the float to be used by the architect or the employer. So this is the key item or the issues for this particular question based on under your PEM contract. And question number 2 is related to shortened program than the contract period. So this one is related to optimistic program question. Okay. So now, what are the issues for you to look into? Whether the contractor can claim additional payment if architect cannot issue the drawings in accordance to the shortened program. This is a very interesting subject. It's on optimistic program. Just now the one question one is on so-called using the float. And then the third one also related to working program. Now the question is, can the contractor change or not the working program? Okay. So question number 4 is related to minutes of meeting. Okay. So this one is related to minutes of meeting. So the issue is whether the existing of the pre-contract minutes of meeting can form a binding contract between the parties. That is the issue. So the other one issue is related to the concept of reasonable time. And then the concept of time bar. What does it mean? And then this one concept on the term regularly and diligently. So now we have analyzed the questions already. Let me warn you, there are so many questions that I put forward is for you to have a very wide exposure on issues related to PAM contract, okay, on a specific subject matter, as for you to have a better understanding. Okay, so the whole purpose here is not to memorize. Okay, please, it's time for you to understand the basic concept and the techniques on how to identify the question and put forward your proposed answers accordingly. Okay, so if you want to memorize, it's up to you. But to me, it's very stressful. So if you understand the basic concept, the key points are there. The rest you can put in your own words. As long as the key points are there, and then the language that they use are matured enough, good points or good grades will be awarded. So if you want to cut and paste and everything without understanding it, then please don't expect good grade for any of your tests, assignment, or even your final assessment or final exam. Hope you understand. This one must be very clear to you, okay? Because you're reaching a level that you're going to go out to work already. So you must start training yourself to be able to think critically. So this is applicable to PPP 3 plus your FYP, okay? A final project. Final project is really need your thinking skill. There's no such thing as copy and paste. Okay? So with that, my introduction to your tutorial number 1 on the Bloom's taxonomy, sorry, and how to analyze questions by questions and the issues by issues. I've completed. Before I proceed further, are there any questions that you'd like to ask? So don't feel shy. Okay. So in the meantime, as I say, that I will jump question by question. So not necessarily I will follow accordingly. Okay. Because for those questions that I didn't answer directly, please go back to discuss among yourselves by using whatever method and come up with your proposed answers. If you want me to check through, it's good. Okay. So you can send it to me. But at the end of the day, not so soon, I will provide you a draft of my proposed answers, okay, for you to take back. So now I will be doing jumping because it's impossible to cover all these questions, all the details within the 2 hours. It's impossible, okay? So I will jump here and there. So whatever question that is covered, take it back and analyze. For whichever question that is not being studied under this tutorial 1 session now, please go back to try to come up with your proposed answers and see how different or how the answers is going to be. What are the things that you forgot to look into and so on. Okay, so this is a very good training for your critical thinking skill. Okay, so are there any issues that you would like to bring in up in your PPP 1, PPP 2, and so on, or whatever notes, or even some of the text that you read through? There are certain areas that you are confused, you are not clear. Please, you think that this venue that I can assist, so please bring forward. Now, don't feel shy. Don't feel shy. Okay. So with that, I will continue. If you don't have any so-called problems from this so-called PPP 3 exercise, okay, from my lectures or from your own reading up, if you have, this is the time. Please be more proactive. Don't just keep on listening again and go back. Okay, there's no point. You won't learn much. It's okay. So now we're talking about the first question is this. The issues we're talking about, the reason for using standard form. So what are the reasons for using standard form? So altogether you can see there are 11 general reasons. It can be more. So here reasons to look into it will be there are 11 of them. But before you start, usually it's your part 1 here. Okay, part 1, you have to come up with introduction. In the introduction, what you want to do is you can do temporary introduction using a definition or the topic under your study, or the issues issue that you are asked to look into. Okay, so these are the introductory part. It can be anything, just a warm up only. Okay, to tell you that, hey, you know what is going on, what are the things that for me to look into. Okay, so that is a part 1. Then the part 2, this will be your part 2. Will be your research on the reasons already. Okay, so this will be your part 2. So as I say, don't have to memorize everything, but get the gist of it. So under this one, first of all, the reason for using standard form, it provides a good legal framework. Okay, so this legal framework will help you to get your so-called relationship between the parties and also the duties and so on. Now, this is the key points that you need to look into. Okay, the second point will be it provides a mechanism conduct the commercial relationship. So that is the key points for you to put forward as the good reasons for using standard form. The third one, put in place administrative procedures. Okay, so when you carry out your project implementation, you must understand the administrative procedures. Okay, what are the procedures that you need if you want to apply for extension of time? What are the procedures to be complied, or which clause to comply under the standard form for your extension of time, your claim, contractual claim, whatever things that need to be looked into by the contractor, and also what are the things to be consultant is administering the project. Okay, so this is another key point. The administrative procedures to ensure that the project is implemented properly. And then the fourth point, negotiations. Okay, so involving the lengthy debates. Okay, can be minimized in terms of the lengthy debate because we are using a standard form. Okay, contract negotiation are not diverted by lengthy debates. Okay, so this is another so-called reason for using standard form, because it's already or established already. Everyone is aware, so don't have to argue and argue and argue. Next is establish the power duties not only of everyone, but special this particular person, the contract administrator. Okay. So if standard form is used, it's going to be more economical because no need to redraft. Okay. Because everybody knows what is the meaning of the content already. So cheaper. Next one, it provides certainty during tendering. So if it's certainty during tendering, then you find that the bargaining power to all parties are equal. Okay, it gives equal bargaining powers. So this one is your number 7. Number 8, you're familiar with the document already. It will be easier and quicker to be priced. Your document can be priced quicker and easier. Number 9 is on the more balanced allocation of the risk. Because the standard form will allocate the risk among party A and party B and party C and so on. Okay, so you understand, then you know how the risks are allocated. Number 10, communication becomes better. So once the communication are better, so chances of avoiding dispute or go to court can be minimized. Okay, so and lastly, provide a uniform policy. Standard form facilitate the implementation of the uniform policy. So these are the good points on why standard form is used. Okay. So now, if you ask another question, can you explain why this understanding is important? Okay, all the good points say is important. So this is optional. Okay, so this one is optional. I just put forward only. If you have optional for this question. Optional for this question to be answered. Okay, so just think about it. Right? So generally, you find that the understanding can help to decide whether standard form of contract with or without modification to be used or bespoke condition contract to be used. So this is important. Once you already understand the reasons for it, then you can have a better so-called support to check and see whether are you going to use type 1. Standard form type 1. That means with changes, with modification. This is type 1 with modification. Okay. Or without modification, that means a type 2. Okay, so that is your without modification, with modification or without modification. Okay, and then you have your type 3, whether you want to create a bespoke condition of contract or not. So these are 3 types. So it's up to you. That's why when you understand them, then only you know which one to be used. Okay, so that's why it's important to understand the above. This is type 1. Okay, and then this is your type 2. This one is your type 2. And then you have your type 3. So this is help you to understand deeper, not just memorize the 11 points. Oh, you thought that, oh, I know very well already. Actually, no, this is the one. The second portion. Can you explain why this understanding is important? Okay, so if you can answer this one, there you are, give you some higher level of thinking. Okay, it will help you to decide whether standard form is good or modified need to be used, or a bespoke condition or contract to be prepared. No, because a certain thing is not fit for this particular project. Okay. So that is your one of the questions I answered already. Okay. So this simple one, the pros and cons, I won't be going through because if I go to every of these, it will be very impossible to cover a lot. Okay. So try to go back and look into your notes or into your text to look into the pros and cons. Okay. I believe under your notes there should be the pros and cons. Okay. So as usual, before you answer, will be your part 2. In a lot of questions, there will be a part 3, okay, or part 4 or part 5, all depending. Okay, so usually if there is the part 3 or part 4 and so on, this will be your conclusion. Conclusion you need to provide for to be provided. Okay, for so-called C3 and above type of questions. Are you clear? So we are talking about C3 and above. You better think of your conclusion need to provide already because your thinking skill is required already. Higher thinking skill are coming in. So please remember part 3 if there's any, but this one is only level 1 or level 2, not so bad. No, you don't have the conclusion because it's all memory part. Okay. So once you have C3, C4, and C5 and C6 already, so your conclusion is mandatory. You know that your level of understanding is very shallow. Okay. So same case here, you don't need conclusion. Okay, part 2, part 3, and no need part 3. Okay, same case here, explain the understanding. Okay, so once you understand this one will help you to make proper recommendation. Clear? So this is the understanding. So I will be going to the difficulties. Okay, when central form is used. So as usual, this is your part 1. Introduction. And then this one will be on your difficulties. Okay. So under difficulties and noticing and the pro and con is in the text there. Try to read it up. These are the examples there. Okay. And then the next one will be the solution. Okay. So I won't be going to all this today. I'm going to go to something more difficult. These are all simple ones. I will be going to today. But I go to the more difficult one for your exercise. So next we go on to the interesting question. Yeah. Under the PEM, contractor design work. So under the contractor design work, now you have to bring up your PEM 2018 out already. Okay. So you have to identify whether any provision allowed the contractor to carry out the design work. Are there any provision? Okay. So before you start, as usual, one, you need to come up with an introduction. Okay. And then now the part 2. Will be on your clause already. So this is your part 2. Okay. And 2018 understanding. So let me show it to you what they mean by this. Okay. So now you have this PEM 2018. So you ask these questions. Can you identify any provisions under your PEM 2018 standard form where the contractor can do the design? So if you look at it, under the PEM clause 2.1, under 1.2, there are something that the contractor can do the design. Same case for clause 1.3. The contractor may be able to do the design. Same case for the clause 27.1. So can you imagine? It just not only simply go and read one clause only and so on. So you need to scan through your contract document or your standard form. So here under PEM clause 1.2, let me show to you. PEM clause 1.2. Okay, the condition of contract beside the clause 1, clause 1.1.2, and so on. So under the 1.2, here, it deals with temporary works. So
Sir,
because
your screen is lagging, sir.
pardon?
Your screen is lagging. Freeze
Okay,
ready.
let me shut it out again, then I come back. So this is the usual problem. I'll go out from the screen share, then I go in again. Okay, so I go in again. Can you see now? Can you see now the screen share?
Yes, yes.
Okay, good. Now let me know. I have to go in and out. Okay, so you can see under the condition of PEM 2018, are there any clause or subclause available for the contractor to carry out the design? So generally, you can see PEM 2018 is a hybrid contract, okay, where it is not 100% pure traditional. Because it's 100% pure traditional, this clause won't be there. Any temporary work design within the consultant will take over, but this one no. So under temporary work, contractor is fully responsible for the safety, adequacy, design, and everything. Okay, so this is situation number 1. Same case for situation number 2 is 1.3. Okay, contractor design responsibility here. See here, contractor design responsibility. So how can contractor become responsible? If contractor propose alternative design, then contractor is going to be responsible. Okay, if you propose alternate design, if the contractor didn't propose alternate design, then all the design matter usually is the consultants or the employer risk item. Okay, so please remember the term usually and not always. Okay, yeah, I will tell you why later on when you do other so-called questions. Okay, so on temporary work, yes, it's 100% contractor's responsibility. Okay, and then the other one you're talking about 27.6. You go to 27.6. That is your NSEs. NSEs also contractor. So you look at your clause 27 on the NSEs work. Normally subcontractor 27. So under 27.6, there is a so-called failure of the contractor to, no, sorry, okay, 26 point on the design by the NSCs. Yeah, sorry, 27.1. Okay. So under 27.1, here it didn't show the design, but here, how NSCs come into being, you must understand first. Okay. So NSCs come into being when the document consists of the PC sum, prime cost sum, and also the provisional sum. Okay. From the provisional sum and prime cost sum, there's a possibility that the NSCs will be coming into the picture. Okay. So this is what the situation becomes like that. The consultants or the architect will propose the NSAs to the contractor. Okay? So now here, although it don't seem so clear that the design matter is come into the equation, but the details will tell you if NSAs were to propose any alternative design. There you are. Okay. So if any NSAs propose alternative design, then the design for this project under this particular part, the risk is passed to the NSAs. Okay, so this what to tell you. Are there any provision under the contract where the contractor can do the design? Answer is yes. At the temporary work, and also alternate design by the main contractor, and also alternate design by the NSAs contractor. Okay, so this is how you tackle the question number here. Okay, so question one. Okay, so these are the areas that tell you that NSAs, you have to carry out alternative design, then there's something for to do. Same case for the contractor, you propose alternative design, so you can carry out the design. Also on all temporary works, you need to calculate or design something before you can put up. Okay, so just to answer the questions, are there any clause? Okay, answer is yes. There are 3 of them there. 1.2, 1.3, and 27.1. Okay, so this is how you answer these particular questions. Okay, and then if you want to elaborate further, you bring up 27.9 in relation to your NSAs. Why you bring this up? Because it tells you who is liable. Contractor shall be fully responsible to ensure that NSAs carry out the work. That's one of them. So, so the NSAs must comply with the provide the design, because NSA is taking over the alternative design. Okay, and then they must carry out the work in the good workmanship, standard of workmanship, then the quality that be specified must be compliant. Okay, so the NSA is going to be responsible for the alternative design work, even though it is parked under the main contractor. Generally, the concept is this. Okay, NSAs is parked to the contractor. The employer, if anything wrong by these NSAs, the employer cannot have any relationship with the NSAs. So the employer will have to take action against the main contractor because of no privity of contract between the NSAs and the employer. Okay. So ultimately, now additional knowledge for you. Okay. If there's a dispute between the contracting parties, okay, so even though there are express provision, this contract terms and condition is so-called express provision. Your PEM is express provision. If there's a dispute, then we have to look for the final answer. It is the court that give you the final answer. If there's any dispute between the contractor and the consultants, or between the contractor and the employer, and if there is a dispute, court will decide. If there is no dispute, whatever been decided, I repeat, whatever been decided, if there is no dispute on the interpretation of the conditions of the contract or whatever so-called terms in the contract document, they are temporarily correct only. I repeat, if there is no dispute among the contracting parties on the express provisions, whoever interpret it and there is no dispute, they are temporarily correct only. If someone in future were to dispute and bring it to the court's interpretation is the proper decision. Whatever that is last time without dispute, they're all temporary only. Remember this important point. So when you study your contract matters, okay? So you always need to look into the court decisions or the precedent of the court to really know the meaning. Okay, because as we goes along, I can tell you there are a lot of situations the interpretation is different from your common sense answers. Okay, a lot of time you say, sir, this is so simple, common sense will give me the answer. Sorry, more often than not, the common sense answer is wrong. A lot of time it can be right. I did mention earlier. Okay, the interpretation can be right or may be right, but not 100%. More often than not, the judge will have a different way of looking at the interpretation. Okay, so this is your number one. Okay, now this is another one. Okay, so before I proceed, now we take 5 minutes break here. Okay. So we take 5 minutes break. So we'll meet up at 3:20. 3:20. So we meet up at 3:20. Take a short break. Okay. Continue with the at 20 p.m. Okay. So see you at 3:20. Now take a short break. Sorry, we meet at 3:25 instead of 3:20. Sorry, it's a typo error. So for those who haven't checked in, you can scan here. Welcome back, everyone. Okay, welcome back. Can you see the screen share? Please respond. Can see the screen share? Can or not?
Yes, sir. Can.
Okay, good. Thanks. Huh? So, okay. And we go on to the next part. Huh? So, this is the second part of the questions. Explain whether a contractor can be held responsible or not. Design error for a pure tradition. That means that the contractor didn't take any design at all. Okay. So now, and also on top of that, there is no provision exists in the contract for the contractor to have any design responsibility. So this is the condition under a contract between party A and party B, a contractor and the owner. Okay. So what will be your opinion on this? Is the contractor going to be responsible or not? So this is the issue. Okay. So you think about it, then you will see how the judge come into the equation, because this issue so happens there is a case law, but it is not a local case law. Okay. So as usual, you have to start on the part one. That is the introduction, and then your part two, where you have your so-called argument, your argument. So this one is a higher level already. Explain. You see, explain here is no more level 2. Okay. This explain is usually high level. Will be C5 category already, because it's a high level. Okay. So under this category, you have to have your introduction and then have your body to explain. Even though there is no design responsibility on the part of the contractor, can the contractor be held liable? So what is your opinion on this issue? So then you present your so-called argument. So you please don't immediately look at the questions and then provide the answers. This is the wrong strategy. As usual, you provide your introduction, okay, and then you present your argument. These are the argument. Okay, so these are part and parcel argument. The argument can be supported by using the condition of contract to support your argument. Okay, but ultimately, condition of contract provide one side of the argument. Ultimately, if somebody were to challenge the written or the express condition, then you have to go to the legal case law to look into the issues whether the interpretation is correct or wrong. I repeat, so generally you use your statute or your conditional contract to support your argument. So one way of supporting your argument is this. Okay, if the contractor propose alternate design, then contractor is going to be liable. If the contractor didn't propose anything alternate design, the contractor is not going to be liable. Okay, so but this question is what? The contractor didn't propose anything. Okay, so the didn't propose any because it's 100% pure traditional procurement approach. It means contractor don't have to do any design. Okay, and on top of that, there is no provision. Okay, to make sure that the contractor is responsible. It's already very clearly stated. Now the question is, if there's a dispute, what is the judge going to interpret? So this is the issue here. Okay, so the question is this: the issue under this, Edward versus Joe Cunning contracting party. Okay, so this is the situation here, where the contractor is Joe Canning and the employer, the owner is Edward Lindenberg. Okay, so this is the facts of the case. So generally, the facts of the case is very useful to understand the background. Okay, but for exam purpose, I repeat, generally for your tutorial, for your assignment, you need to put up the facts of the case to understand your argument. But for exam environment, the facts of the case is not so important. The important part will be the decision. This part is the most important. So in exam part, this part is the most important. Okay. So in a tutorial, in assignment, all these things, yes, the facts of the case is to give you a good background on what actually happened. Okay. So this one will tell you what things happen between the parties. And this is called the facts of the case. Okay. And then this is one of the argument by the employer. So the facts of the case plus the employer's argument. Okay. But whatever argued by the employer or whatever things, whether right or wrong, you have to wait for the judge to make that decision. Okay. So that's why I say, in legal studies, whatever interpreted by the parties are all temporary and is going to be useless if there is a challenge. Okay. And then the answers to interpret it correctly is not the parties under the contract. It must be somebody neutral. And this somebody neutral is an expert. They are the judge. They are trained in interpreting the law. Okay. So this is the basic concept that you take home today. Okay. For your answers, you don't go direct. You put forward the argument saying that, okay, if there's an alternate design and the contractor take out the alternate design, then contractor is responsible. It's provided under the PAM. But now, under this situation here, the situation is this. There is no alternative design taken, then definitely not in trouble. But now the employer still insists that the contractor is in trouble. Okay, is it correct or not? Even though it's expressly stated, no design, no fault. Okay, so what will be the answers? So you look at the judgment. So this is how the judge come to their conclusion. Okay. So the judge is using this already. It's a very important part. Now you keep on seeing this item surfacing. Okay. Implied terms. So you can see the contract just now that you go through is express term. So under the express term, it clearly says that no design responsibility, no liability. But then the judge say, hey, there is always in a written contract, there are some implied terms need to be looked into. Okay, so what are the implied terms? So it means that when the contractor doing the work, defendant here means contractor, defendant here, it means the contractor. Okay, defendant here means when contractor carry out the work, the contractor as a impliedly must do the work in a good workmanship and then take care of as a competent builder. This is what is required. Implied that the contractor must behave this way. Don't have to put into the contract. You must behave to be good in your workmanship and exercise care as a competent builder. Okay. If the contractor didn't behave this way, contractor could be liable. So this is how the judge interpret. The defendant is a contractor. This is something the so-called implied. Okay. So now you look at the situation. What is the problem here? Okay. So there is a walls are non-load bearing and there are walls that are load bearing. Okay, so there are walls were not load bearing. It shows that prepared by the surveyor means prepared by the architects or by the designer, supposedly indicate which walls are not load bearing and which walls are load bearing. Okay, so this is the situation. Now what happened is this: as a builder, he should know that when something is 9-inch brick wall, even though it's not described in the drawing, as a competent builder, you need to know that when there is a 9-inch brick wall, it means load bearing. Okay, so although the drawing doesn't show whether it's load bearing or non-load bearing, but as a competent builder, you need to know that a 9-inch brick wall is load bearing. Okay, so if you are competent builder and you know that it is 9-inch and it is load bearing and you simply go and demolish it, then the contractor or the builder do not exercise so-called the skill and the care required of a competent builder, and therefore the contractor is in breach of the contract. Okay, so this is how the judge apply. Even though the design is done by the other party, didn't show all the things properly or correctly, but if you are a competent builder, you are responsible to identify which wall is load bearing, which wall is not load bearing. If you fail to exercise this, then you are going to be responsible because you didn't carry out the duty as a competent builder. Okay, so it's going to be liable in contract but not under negligence. This is how the judge come to the conclusion. So repeat, even though there is no design responsibility, but as a competent builder, there is an implied term that you must carry out the work in a good workmanship manner plus taking care. Okay, so if you didn't do that, you are not a competent builder, and if you are not a competent builder, you are going to be responsible. So this is the conclusion. Okay, so this is the conclusion for this so-called question. Okay, so this one I can consider that this one as your so-called part 3 or 4 already. Okay, yeah. So I hope you understand now the importance of the implied terms. Express term is nothing, and that you are. Okay, so if you look at your pen form, the contractor is not going to be liable because here it says I didn't do the design, nothing is going to be responsible. But then interpreting this one, hidden under this part, even though you didn't do the design, under this Edward Lindenberg versus Joe Canning, there is an implied terms under the contract that if you don't do your work as a professional, as a competent builder, if the competent builder has tell the designer or the owner that, okay, I'm warning you now that this wall, if I will demolish, you are going to have problems on the top of this wall. That means you are a competent builder. You already make known to the consultants and to the employer that I know if I demolish this wall, load bearing one, something will happen on the top there. Once I done that, you are covered. But this builder here didn't do that. So that's why the builder is responsible. And the builder is Joe Canning. Okay, contracting is responsible for this so-called error. Okay, yeah. So this is how you understand this type of so-called questions. Okay, so generally you can see the details of the so-called case law, I clean it out. I need to put in the relevant one. So please be careful when you do your assignment, you do your tutorial. Sometimes you put in the gist of the case or the facts of the case as relevant is important or sufficient already. Don't go and copy and paste the whole thing there. You are not going to be rewarded. It shows that you don't understand the questions. Okay. So in exam environment, even better. You don't have to put the so-called the facts there. Immediately you know this case and then this is a conclusion or this is the legal principle. You just put it there. You are very good already. Okay. So another point I want to make to you is this. Since you cannot find local case law and now these are foreign ones, it is possessive only. Okay. Possessive here means that in future, if our local judge were to use it, more often than not, they will come back to the same conclusion. Okay. So this is what the importance of foreign law in relation to the Malaysian environment. Okay. It's persuasive if it's foreign. Okay. Yeah. So subcontracting, similarly, can the main contractor responsible if NSC's design is defective? This one is interesting. Okay, so in a sense that now main contractor and NSC is already. So now who is doing the design? It's not main contractor to design. It's not the consultant design. It is the NSC's design is defective. Okay, so please differentiate between the various type of facts. This case is NSC's design defective. Do you think the main contractor can be responsible? So your argument on all this, as usual, as I say, part one will be the introduction. Okay, and then this one, part two. So this one is your part two. You make use of the. You can see from here just now, I'm using the same approach. Okay, using of your body or argument, your presentation, as your so-called argument. Okay, because the body of your presentation or argument, that is a part two. Okay, and then after that, you see here, this is your part three. Okay, the legal principle. So this one is your three. Okay, so part three is your legal so-called argument. You need to present. Okay, and then your part four will be your conclusion. Okay, so this one will be your conclusion. Now this one will be your part four. Okay. So this one will be your conclusion. So this is how you look at the answers. Okay. So now I go step by step. Okay. Part one is on the introduction. Part two is a argument. The argument, usually you bring forward your contractual or your condition of contract understanding to present your case. So this is what is shown to you earlier on the various clauses that is related to the design. So these are the items related to design. Under the clause 27.1, which I have done earlier already, it tells you that there is a design to be carried out by the NSAs. If NSAs carry out the alternative design, then NSAs is going to be responsible. Okay, so this is one of them here. It must be fit for purpose and must be comply with the contract. Okay, so anything related to the choice of material or goods, NSAs is responsible. So this is part of the contract. Okay, so but contractor to make sure that the NSAs comply with the contractor. Okay, so apart from that, NSA is going to be responsible. It's very clearly here. So now what does the judge so-called say so? These are the presentation using your contract understanding to bring forward the argument. This is your so-called express condition of the contract presentation argument. It is not powerful enough. You still need this part 3. Part 3 belongs to the legal argument. So more often than not, you have to hunt for the legal argument to support whether it's correct or not. So this particular situation, as I say, is very clearly stated that if the contractor is not doing the design, if the NSA is doing the alternative design proposal, all responsibilities belongs to the NSCs that is under your contract. So now see how the judge decide. Okay. So same case here, the judge also have to look into the correct interpretation under the contract, or whether it's right or wrong must be looked into under the case law. Okay. So you have to look at the case law to see whether the above argument is correct or not. Okay, so the above argument is the layman's argument. In order to find out whether the layman's argument is correct or not, then you look at this case. So in this case, we have one under the Irish Supreme Court. Okay, there is an Irish Supreme Court on this matter. It's a case between Nota versus John Sick in 1977. Okay, so it's the judge at the Supreme Court had to decide whether his contractor is liable for NSC's design error, where the condition make no reference. This is exactly the same as our PAM contract above. Exactly the same. You can see here, here is contractor is not going to be responsible. See here? The contractor is not going to be shall, okay? And not the contractor shall be responsible. See here? It tells you exactly that the contractor is not responsible. Same case here, no design, that means no responsible. So whether it's correct or not, still the judge have to look into the implied term. Okay, so also look into the implied term under the contract. So this is the facts of the case where the owner of the project, the claimant is the owner. That means the owner sued the contractor. Okay, for the making of a so-called factory. Okay, and that factory is producing wallpaper. So the owner engaged Horse Export to do the design, supplying, erection of the factory, including the roof light. So this is what the NSA is supposed to do. Design, part of the contract. Okay, so this is what the NSA is supposed to do, to construct the superstructure of the factory, including the roof light, to carry out the design. Okay, so it shows that Horse Export becomes the nominated subcontractor to the main contractor. This is the main contractor. Okay, so this is the facts of the case. Okay, so the fact says that after the roof completed already, follow practical completion. Okay, then the roof began to leak. So this is the problem. After the practical completion, the roof is leaking. Okay, then the owner sought to claim from the main contractor. Why the owner must claim from the main contractor? It is because the main contractor is the only one have a privity of contract with the owner. The NSAs have no privity of contract. Okay, so although there is no design responsibility for the main contractor, now what is the judge argument? It was argued on behalf of the claimant, that means this is the owner, that a design obligation was implied in the main contract. This is the owner's so-called argument. Okay, so says that, okay, although there is no design responsibility, but it is implied. Design obligation implied. That is how the owner argued the case. Okay, so whether the judge will come back to the same conclusion or not, this is the conclusion. This is the most important part. The legal principle, okay, is the most important part. Okay, so the legal principle is this. This is what the judge, what the owner argue, that although there is no design responsibility for NSAs by the main contractor, the owner says that there is an implied obligation under this contract that the main contractor is responsible, even though the design is by the NSAs. Now you look at the judge conclusion. Okay, the Irish court held no such term could be implied into the main contract, and therefore John 6, that means the main contractor is not responsible. Okay, because here, under the contract between John 6 and the owner, there is no such condition to say that the main contractor is going to be responsible for the NSA's error in design. So if there's a case, this case now, it shows that even the implied term that is proposed by the owner of this project, the Supreme Court of Ireland don't agree with the owner's interpretation. That's why I say these are all temporary interpretation. Okay, so these are all temporary interpretation. This is the supreme interpretation. Okay, so conclusion: the main contractor will be responsible for design fault of nominated subcontractors if there is a clear statement in the main contract. If there is a clear statement in the main contract, but there is no such thing. Therefore, in the absence of the express obligation, an employer would have to show that such an obligation was implied. Okay? And the judge here says that there is no such implication here. You try to show that there's an implied or not, but this is not the case here. Okay? So now, so in the absence of an express obligation, an employer would have to show that such an obligation was implied. Okay? Unfortunately, the Supreme Court of Ireland do not with this concept. Okay, so this is important. The Irish court, Irish Supreme Court, do not agree. Okay, so now, if you know these other potential answers already, so how to protect as an owner? Okay, in future, to protect the owner, may have to put something like that. Okay, to get the design warranty directly from the subcontractor or NSCs. Get the design warranty. Okay, alternatively, so this one in future. Okay, situation 1. Okay, to protect himself. Then this one, situation 2. Okay, to use the standard form by amending the standard form. Okay, situation 2, because of the most of the common standard form used, make it clear that the main contractor is not responsible for the NSA's defective design. Okay, so if you can, you try to amend it, take away the not, delete this one. Okay, so take this one away. The standard form, although the standard form is already very clear, then you have no choice. You have to delete this one. If you don't delete this one, you are going to be responsible. When you delete this one, please consult the specialist, whether you have done it properly or not. Okay, so this is important. If not, usually not responsible. So this for you. So, and to make it, to protect yourself, you have to take this away. So similarly, the concept is same. It's a foreign one. This one is possessive only. But the judge, if there's such a case in Malaysia, will use this conclusion also. Okay? Yeah. So I jump to another question. So this one, architect approval of this thing. If you want, you do it up yourself. If not, then I will come back to this one. So now I go to the next part on program. Okay, so program here. This is a question on your working program, and we are dealing with critical, non-critical activities. Okay, so we are dealing with float. Okay, can the architect use the float or not? That is the issue. Okay, so show whether the contractor position is weak if the architect were to use the float in a so-called non-critical item. As usual, part 1, you have to start off with that. And if you want, you can have your part 2 under the types of program. So program, you have a tender program. So what is the use of tender program? Is to be submitted during the tendering. Okay, for the employer, one use, for the consultant or the contractor, another use. Okay, so then you have your working program, then you have your contract program. Okay, so the working program is more towards the planning of the work, and it have to be realistic. Okay, it's used for planning to show the methods and so on. So these are the purpose of your working program. A contract program is not adopted in most contract nowadays. Why? Because it's very problematic. Okay, if a program becomes a contract program, you have a lot of problems. The problems under the contract program I discussed under the so-called lectures already. Okay, so give you a lot of problems. So that's why you try to avoid a program to become a contract program. And also now is under this one will be part 3 on why float is required in the working program. So you can see a lot of parts. Sometimes minimum 3 parts. Introduction, part 2, part 3. But in this case, higher level will have a lot of parts. Part 3, why you need float in the working program. Okay, so generally float is required in the working program. Is some form of contingency. Okay, it means as a cushion for something that goes wrong. Okay, that goes wrong can be due to what? There will be risk, uncertainty upon the contractor. Okay, due to background condition, materials, weather condition, and so on. So these are the uncertainties that is faced by the employer. Okay, so another situation is due to the contractor and the subcontractors making mistake. See here, these are the risks faced by the contractor and subcontractors, and why it need to be included in the program as a cushion to introduce the float. So these are the so-called rationale behind it, why float is required. Okay, so now this is your part 4. Okay, whether the employer or the consultant can make use of the float free of charge. So this is the part 4. Okay, just now we have part 3. Now this is the part 4. Okay, so in order to understand this, so you need to look into the legal provision. So this is the most important one. This is the legal provision. Okay, so this case is to be supported by the ESCON contracting versus Alfred McAlpine. Okay, the legal position for float, you need to look into this case law. Okay, ESCON contracting versus Alfred McAlpine. So you need to find out from this the facts of the case from the library, the text, or the online source to understand the facts of the case more. But the legal position I'm going to tell you now here. You have to make use of the this case law. The legal position is this. This is the legal position. Okay, float is available is on the first come first serve basis. So this is the legal position. Float is on the first come first serve so-called principle. Okay, so this is the legal position. So some of you may not be familiar. So under the tutorial section, I will explain the meaning of first come first serve. So this is the meaning of first come first serve. Okay, so to understand this concept of first come first serve, this is the example here. Activity A, let's say, is got 5 weeks float. Okay, then first come, let's say the first party to use it is the consultants. First come. Okay, the consultant use it how long? Because the consultant delay in issuing the drawings for 4 weeks. Okay, so now you have a float of 5 weeks. The first party using it first come, consultant delay for 4 weeks. So balance of the activity A will be 1 week remaining. Clear? It's 1 week remaining. Then if the second party is the contractor who delay the work by 5 weeks. Contractor go and delay the works by 5 weeks. So what will be the implication? First come, already use up 4 weeks. Now the second one, delayed by 5 weeks. So what will be the implication? The balance is only 1 week. You delay by 5 weeks, so it means that the contractor have to bear the consequence of 1 minus 5. That means 4 weeks delay. Okay, so this is the first come first serve principle. If the consultant use it first, consultant use the 4 weeks away. Balance only 1 week. Who is the unlucky one who use it the second time will be responsible. So this is called first come first serve principle. Similarly, there is another so-called support system for you to understand. That is the Society of Construction Law. So Society of Construction Law put forward some understanding on this particular issue. Okay. So what it says is this. If the contractor becomes entitled to extension of time due to employer's delay, any remaining float must be taken up first. Only there is anticipated delay to the completion will an extension of time be applicable. So what they try to say is this. Okay. This is the situation here for your green argument. Okay. So if a contractor is entitled for extension of time, then this extension of time will be given to the contractor. That is green and green. Now we're talking another argument here. Okay. So I put it here as blue. Blue. Okay. So under the blue and blue presentation, so this is the blue presentation. What it means is this. If contractor delay occurs after all the float used up, all the float already used up, okay? Then, if the completion date is affected, then the contractor is going to be liable to pay for the liquidated damages. So I'm using this as an example. Okay, this activity is B here. Okay. So let's say activity B got 5 weeks float. Now I just use a simple example again. 5 weeks float. Okay. And now contractor delay the activity B for 7 weeks. So this delay is due to contractor 7 weeks. Okay. So the float is 5 weeks minus 7 weeks. Then the contractor delayed this activity B by 2 weeks. 5 minus 7, 2 weeks. So what does it mean? Because the contractor is the one who create this problem, then the contractor have to pay the liquidated damages to the employer. So this one is tied back to your second so-called reasoning. Any contractor delay, when all the float used up, then the contractor is responsible to pay the liquidated damages to the employer. Okay, so this is how you understand this delay principle. Okay, so now what will be your conclusion of all this understanding? Okay, so this is your conclusion part. Part 5 conclusion. Common sense interpretation is one angle, is no good. Here I put here common sense interpretation. You can put it there, but it is a no good interpretation. What you need is the legal interpretation. This is the one that you have to look into. So what is the legal interpretation? It means that first come, first serve. Okay. So first come, first serve. That is the legal interpretation. First come, first serve. It doesn't mean that if the contractor prepared the program, all the floats belongs to the contractor. So this is the layman interpretation is no good. So this is the legal position. First come, first serve. So those who delay it further will be responsible. Okay, this is the first come, first serve principle. So this is how you understand this particular question. Okay. So as usual, since this is the foreign case law, it is possessive. Okay. Okay, now this one is under the shorter program. So you can go to the text there to look at the optimistic program and come up with the argument. Okay, I won't be doing this one. And let me jump to the next one. Yeah, I'm going to do this minutes of meeting. Okay, minutes of meeting. Whether the existing of the minutes of meeting at the pre-contract stage can form a binding contract. Okay, so you can see here part 1 is your introduction, and then this is the part 2. That is your body of argument. Okay, part 2 is your body of the argument. Yeah, part 2 is usually this one, the body of the argument. Okay, it's the body of the argument. So under this one, you go to the case law. This case law, because minutes of meeting, I will PAM there is no clause related to minutes of meeting. Okay, so you have no choice. Immediately you get jump to the case law because there is no clause in PAM 2018 to minutes of matter. Okay, so that's why you jump to the case law. So under this case law will give you an idea whether minutes of meeting before the contract is signed can form the basis of a good contract. Okay, can form a binding contract between the parties. So under this cubic building versus Richardson, so this is the facts of the case, and this is the facts of the case. So the case concern whether a contract has been entered between a contractor and a subcontractor. So there's a contract between the contractor and the subcontractor. Okay. So the contractor had arranged a meeting with the subcontractor to go through all the details. Okay. The main contractor arranged with the subcontractor on all the details already before the contract is signed. Okay. So the meeting take place and the contractor produce all the minutes with confirm. Contractor produce all the form and all these are agreed. Okay, so prior to the meeting, subcontractors have already submitted a price BQ. That means submit the offer earlier than the meeting. Already submit the offer. Okay. So what is the implication? Upon receiving the offer, the contractor issue a letter in asking the subcontractor to proceed, even though no formal contract is formed, or based on the meeting and the minutes of meeting only. Okay. So this is the facts of the case. Okay. So now the letter says that a formal contract would be prepared later. The subcontractors neither signed the letter nor did it sign the contractor's official order. So this is what is happening. The NSAs didn't sign the document. Then what to depend or refer to form as the basis of the contract is only the minutes of meeting. Okay, because the offer and all these things is not being accepted by the nominated subcontractor. But there is a meeting. In the meeting, there is the details of what to do and what the contract content are discussed. So now what does the judge decide on the minutes of meeting? So this is the legal principle. Okay. So this is the legal principle. Whether the minutes of meeting can form a contract or not, even though the offer by the contractor or this thing is not being accepted. So this the court's view means the legal binding. Okay. So what the judge analyze? Okay? There is a terms agreed at the meeting. First point. Okay. And number 2 is confirmed in the minutes. Number 2. And number 3, all the essential contract have been agreed by the parties. So these are the 3 important points. So these are the 3 important points. So from these 3 important points, although only the minutes of meeting is there, the court concluded that there is a formal and a valid contract is formed, even though the subcontractor don't want to sign the offer. Okay. So this is the legal position. Minutes of meeting can sometimes be the basis of a contract. So be careful. So in future, when there are minutes of meeting ongoing and there are agreement, then it can form a contract. If there's a disagreement, then it doesn't form a contract. In this case, all the terms are agreed, everything. So the judge says everything agreed. This is a valid contract. Okay. So the judge go further. Yeah, the judge goes further. These are additional things for you to think about. Okay, the judge goes further. However, both parties have not framed its argument in that way. Okay, see, the judge that is analyzing the time, look at it. Oh, you didn't didn't confirm all these things in that way. Therefore, the court was unable to make that decision. However, okay, decided the agreed terms constitute an offer. See here, this one constitute an offer. So, which was accepted by the contractor when it sent its letter instructing commencement. So this is how the judge analyzed in a separate way. Okay, so whether a contract is signed or not makes no difference. Okay, so in order for a minutes of meeting to be a contract, these other situations need to be complied. Okay, but in this case, the judge look at it is quite similar. Okay, so there is no need a formal contract to be signed. A contract can be formed based on the minutes of meeting. If the minutes of meeting got these 3 ingredients, guarantee a contract is formed. I use the term, guarantee a contract is formed. But if there is not all are there, it still can, because this is what the court had decided. that there is agree on the terms and the contractor send the letter to us NSCs to start work. This a slight variation to the above. Okay, so this is how you make use of all these legal text to help you. As usual, possessive only because it's all foreign text. If you can locate the local one, then you can make use of it. Okay, so this is how you understand the legal principle on minutes of meeting. Okay, I try to do another one more before I call it the end of the day. So this one is a general issue. Okay, reasonable time is one of them. I will choose one. Reasonable time. There's another one. Concept of time bar. Okay. So in this case, I think I will do reasonable time. What does reasonable time mean? Okay, in relation to PAM, because PAM didn't so-called define reasonable time. If there is such a thing in the contract, what does it mean? Okay, so as usual, you need to put forward the introduction. Okay. That is part A. Part 1, introduction. So then this is your part 2. Okay, so part 2 will be the body or presentation of your argument. Okay, so please be careful. The word reasonable is not your dictionary meaning. It have to be the legal meaning. Okay, in order for the legal meaning, then you where to get it from. So this legal meaning is taken by this case law to tell you what it means reasonable. Okay, yeah. So what is reasonable is this. So more often than not, if it is expressly stated, then the express statement is to be followed. If it's expressly stated. If it is non-expressly stated, that means none left to be implied, then the judge is the one who decides what is reasonable. Okay, so the judge will come in to decide for you what is reasonable. Okay, just to determine the time allowed. Okay, so how the judge use? The judge will use this method, customary practice, if available, to decide whether the time is reasonable or not. Okay, so one of them is customary practice. Okay, yeah. So this will comes to help you to define what is reasonable. So if it's customary for, let's say, this construction project at this location, reasonable time means 3 weeks. So that is reasonable. And then the other location is 4 weeks. Then the judge says, okay, is the reasonable time is 4 weeks. So what time amounts to reasonable is up to the judge to decide, and not between the consultants or the contractor to decide. Okay, so this is how it interpret. So if the period of time is stipulated in the contract, then don't have to argue. Okay, the law will not override the stipulated time, even is unreasonable. The judge won't disturb. Okay, if we say reasonable time is defined as 3 days, then it's 3 days. Okay, so if there is none, then how to interpret the reasonable time? The judge will come in, no other people. Okay, so reasonable time depends upon the circumstances of the particular case. This is point number 1. Okay, so this is point number 1, depend the circumstances of the particular case, or depend on the customary practice. Okay, yeah. So it is used where it is impossible to specify precisely how the time should be allocated or allowed. Okay, so under this case law will explain what are the criteria is used by the judge to establish reasonable time. Okay, so if a clause contain clause setting up specific time, then it had to be followed. Where no period is stated, okay, when no period is stated, then what does it mean? Okay, so neither a reasonable nor any specific period can be implied. If it is expressly stated, you have to follow. If it's not expressly stated, then possible it can be subject to interpretation by the judge. Okay, so the judge will have to apply a reasonable time for such type of situation. Okay, for example, under your PEM 2018 clause 1.4, architect to issue instruction on being given notice by the employer on the discrepancies, but there is no period or the time stated for the architect to reply. No time period stated. Okay, so then how long? The answer is going to be reasonable time need to be implied. Okay, so what is the reasonable time? It is for the judge to decide, because in locally we don't have a so-called case law. We make use of the foreign one, and this one is going to be possessive. So how to decide reasonable time is implied by the judge, and the judge says how long. That will be the answers. You're asking me what is reasonable. I tell you is not for me to decide, or for the consultant to decide, or for the employer to decide. It is for the judge to decide if there is an argument. If there is no argument among the parties, then that figure will be taken as reasonable. Okay, so with that, the concept of reasonableness is explained to you. Okay, you're not clear, you have to read a few times to understand the basic concept, which I don't think is that difficult. Okay, so the bottom line is this: if there's nothing written, then the judge will have to imply. If party A and party B cannot agree over the interpretation of the reasonable time. If there is no argument, then it will be temporary use. If there's an argument, then the case will go to the court. The court will decide on what is reasonable or not reasonable. Okay, because even you get it to the arbitration, the arbitrator also cannot decide because it's interpretation. Okay, arbitrator cannot interpret properly. At the end of the day, the power of interpretation goes to the court. So anything deal with interpretation, arbitrator cannot help you much. Okay, so arbitrator will only can help you on the so-called technical matters and also on the facts of the case. Yeah. Time bar. This is another concept for you to look into. So there are two types of time bar: contractual time bar and statutory provision. That means a limitation act time bar. So there are two angles that you need to know. Type one is under the contractual. Okay, so we look into both of them. Contractual. Under the contractual, there is always under the contract there, especially under your PEM, there is a contractual time bar. Okay, so basically, as I say, there will be an introduction. Okay, after the introduction, then you can proceed. This is your so-called, this is your part 1, and this is your part 2. This is your part 2. So this is what you put forward your part 2. Time bar means if that period is expired, then your rights are expired. Okay, means that the time prescribed for carrying out a particular action has expired. This is called time bar. Okay, so generally under the Limitation Act, 1953 Limitation Act, it says that for a simple contract, 6 days from the date of the breach of contract. Okay. For special contract is 12 years from the date of the breach of the contract. That is a time bar under your so-called normal contract. Okay. And then this for special contract. For action in tort and negligence is 6 years the action command. Okay. So similarly for your latent damages is either 6 years or 3 years depending on the drafting. Okay. Yeah. So this is for your contract. Okay. But for negligence, this is the criteria. Okay. An action cannot be brought after 15 years from the date of the Negligence Act. So these are the time bar that is provided under the Limitation Act 1953. So you need to understand that. So the time bar is prevent you from suing the other party. Okay. So and then expiry or limitation is a complete defense. One that expired is a complete defense for any other claim already. Okay. Yeah. So therefore, if you forgot to put inside your defense, to raise it as the defense, your rights could be expired. Okay. So these are important points for you to look into. So it should be noted that all these will negate your time bar. There's a fraud involved. Okay. The limitation period does not begin to run until the fraud is discovered. So if there are fraudulent activities involved, so this is how the time expire. Okay. Or it can be discovered with a reasonable diligence. Okay. So this is how you interpret time bar from the statutory and also from the contractual. Okay. Contractual usually this. For example, under the contract, the time bar, no extension of time will be given unless notice is submitted by the contractor within 14 days. This is the contractual under your PAM. So we will go back to this one. To say that if this 14 days you didn't submit, then your rights are gone. If no notice has been submitted, the contractor's right for extension of time is time bar. So this is your contractual. Okay. So this one is your contractual. This is your situation one. Okay. Okay. And situation two. This is situation two. This one is the statutory. This is the statutory time bar. This is the contractual time bar. So there's a difference between the two. So with that, I come and end to this so-called tutorial for your group 8. So let me check your attendance. Okay. So let me check your attendance. I'll try to download here. Okay, here is your tutorial 1, group 8. 2 p.m. to 4:30 p.m. and the date is 18 June 2021. Let me save and see. So let me do the filtering. Okay, let me do the filtering. So I have a 30%, 32 here is 30%. That means full attendance. Let me check and see. I counter check here. Full attendance. Oh, something wrong with Silver Lake. You can see here, keep on spinning the whole afternoon already. So never mind. At least I got the I do the menu update. Menu update. This one shows the menu update. So altogether there are 30. These 2% to be taken away. Let me delete it out. The entire row. Okay. So you have two here. Then I arrange it up. So this one you got 30%. Good. So I will do the adjustment later. Okay. Tutorial 1 group 8 2.30 p.m. to 4.30 p.m. and 18 June 2021. Okay, let me save under this category, under the desktop, save. Okay, 30 of you all full present. I will do the updating because the Silver Lake is something wrong. Okay. Yeah, until now still cannot stop spinning. So if there anything, please raise either to WhatsApp me or email to me. I will stop the recording already. Okay.